Very good afternoon, colleagues. It is exactly 1 o'clock, and I think we do have a quorum. I do see that we are a total of 6 members online. Am I correct, Mr. Dumisweni? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Yes, we do have a quorum, Chair.
Okay, perfect. Warm welcome, honorable members. This will be a very short meeting, and thank you for making time to join the special meeting. In front of you is
Recording
our
in
agenda.
progress.
It deals essentially only with the adoption of the committee report and apologies. Please can I ask for a hand to adopt the agenda and a seconder, please? Can I ask for someone to move for the adoption of the agenda, please?
Well, afternoon, Chair. It's Honorable Shabangu. I move for the adoption of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, honorable member. Can I take a seconder, please? Honorable Peterson?
Thank you so much, Chair. Greetings, everyone. I second the adoption, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, honorable member. Okay, let me then please, I'm going to hand over to you, Ms. Abrams, to take us through the report, but to focus please on our observations and recommendations.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can we just for the records note if there were any apologies for our minutes, please? Thank you. And then I'll proceed with the...
My apologies, I forgot to ask Mr. Dumzweni, do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair. We've got an apology from Honorable Adams, who's currently in another committee meeting. So she indicated that she'll join us later. And the apology of Honorable Honorable Paul is still standing, Chair. With regards to the EFF, Honorable Moilala indicated that she won't be part of the meeting, but Honorable Lonze will join as one of the participants. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Those apologies are noted. Please proceed, Ms. Abrams.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm just waiting for Mvaba to remove the... There we go. Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon to everyone, including members and colleagues on the platform. As members would have noted, Monday morning, I submitted the first draft of the report, and that included all observations and recommendations for our meetings with the department and the NYDA. By last night, I submitted the updated report, which included our observations and recommendations emanating from the meeting yesterday with the Commission for Gender Equality. This morning, I received some additional input, which I've amended, which I'll highlight in yellow to members for the report. Chairperson, just to say from the onset, this report could not have been done without the direct involvement of the committee. It's really been a comprehensive report, and we've seen in the interactions with members and the relevant departments and entities, the incorporation not just of issues that came from the reports themselves, but in terms of meetings we have conducted before and oversight. So we have tried as far as possible to ensure that that is a reflection in the report. And then to my colleagues, Crystal and Tasneem, their direct input in this report is invaluable, so definitely could not have been done without their help. As Chairpersons noted, this is our report, annual performance plan, budget vote 20 for the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities for financial year 2025-26, and with today's date. I'll move directly down to our observations and highlight to members, they're quite substantive. The observations have been divided, as well as the recommendations, into 3 components, focusing on the department, the National Youth Development Agency, and the CGE. So we'll first cover the observations, highlight a few issues, and then move on to the recommendations. With Chairperson's permission, I'll go through all the observations and then the recommendations, and then request for any additional input or amendments. So with respect to the department, the committee welcomed the report. The key concern was around that limited operational budget, and what the department is left with after the transfers. The concern around the monitoring and evaluation is how the department would hold relevant government entities and departments to account, and how they would undertake the monitoring and evaluation. In terms of mainstreaming gender, youth, and disability, again, the committee really questioned the extent to which the department was actually being effective in mainstreaming issues pertaining to these 3 groups focused on women, youth, and person with disabilities. And a specific example was highlighted around the 2% targets and adherence in relation to that. In relation to that. For youth, again, the committee reiterated the concern around the high unemployment, that overall there was a lack of focus around disability and there was definitely a greater need. Dr. Lutlapi highlighted the issue of there seems to be a lack of focus around responsibilities that accompany the rights. With respect to risk mitigation, I think it was the Honourable Mabel who highlighted that, yes, they identify the risks, they give mitigations strategies, but the mitigation strategies are questionable. And the question remains, even if you have that strategy in place, will it actually address the risk? In terms of transversal compliance, the committee inquired about the way in which the department was measuring the transversal compliance with gender and disability equality goals in terms of the new strategic plan. With respect to enforcement, again, the committee questioned whether the department had mechanisms in place to enforce interdepartmental accountability when targets were repeatedly not met. With respect to their financial constraints, again, the committee questioned if the department had learned any lessons pertaining to underperformance since its inception and how this was applied, given that consistently the the department indicates they can't do what they need to because their budget is limited. So if that's been since the inception, what do they do differently? What have they learned? And general matter, the final one, the committee questioned whether the department had conducted any policy gap analysis between the strategic plan and budget baselines. So the next observations is relevant to each program. For finance, it pertained to the costing details for the implementation of the targeted outcomes in 2025-26. The concern was whether the department would be able to deliver and achieve all those targets, particularly in its core programs with the limited budget and staff. In terms of use of consultants, again, despite the explanation given to members about the use of consultants and what it entails, the committee was still not satisfied with the responses, and it remains an area of concern. With the supplier database, yes, the committee acknowledged that they're using Treasury's database, but then questioned, do they have a database of their own to look at women-owned and youth-owned businesses and persons with disabilities owned, and whether they're sharing that with National Treasury if the current database of Treasury is inadequate in providing for those focus group areas. In terms of HR, with that business case that the department refers to, the concern was they're asking for 342 staff, an expanded organogram, and the committee has not seen that business case or organogram. And again, the concern was The fiscus is constrained at the moment. They're asking for more staff, but there's no justification or indication as to why or how. With international travel, again, there's an acknowledgement of why it's important, but I think the key message from the committee was, was there a cost-benefit analysis attached? How does it translate to actually impacting on women, youth, and persons with disabilities when these trips are undertaken? And the fact that there was a question posed by Action SA for which the minister didn't respond to. For Program 2, Economic Empowerment, committee sought more information as to how the department measures successful outcomes. Again, particularly around the interventions, questioning why these interventions, what would be the purpose, what would be the impact, and needing more details. Again, under that program, the department said they needed a dedicated team to look at particular targets, but they don't specify, are they still needing more people to undertake that work? Or is that part of the plan that was sent to Treasury as part of the 342? So again, it takes back to, they've got a limited budget, they're wanting to do all these targets, but is it realistic? Around 100 billion, the committee's asking, is there a plan to monitor and assess that around the transformation fund? And again, with all the interventions programs 2, 4, and 5, will it actually make a difference and enhance economic opportunities for women, youth, and persons with disabilities? Under the social empowerment, the committee inquired about the evidence that was in the programs and targets to actually demonstrate that through the work of this program, it's actually safeguarding social justice and creating a safe environment, because that's the ultimate goal for which they wanting to aspire to. Sanity Dignity Program. In a nutshell, there were many concerns about this program. Members brought in what was seen and heard and what members were made aware of, both with our engagements with national and provincial departments, as well as on oversight. There was a serious concern that overall the program needs to be reviewed. It's being implemented haphazardly, the concern about funds being returned, and then just the overall questioning of the monitoring and evaluation of the department in respect to this program. Again, in terms of consequent management, the committee really questioned and said, well, once they've done the monitoring and evaluation, surely there should be a consequent management for the executive authority for failing in particular provinces where they don't deliver on the Sanity Dignity Program or return funds. We made specific reference to the issues in the 4 schools visited in Lekwa. And again, that just points to, even though the overall aim of the Sanity Dignity Program is to focus around quintile 1 to 3, a constituency example showed that 4 these schools are meant to be eligible, girls are not receiving. Again, noted the failure of the Mpumalanga department and the need for us to get more detailed information in terms of the schools. And then reiterating that the Sanity Dignity Program must be implemented comprehensively within the context, just correct that, of sexual reproductive health, gender-based violence, and teenage pregnancy. Moving to the National Council on GBV, again with the budget, the concern was how is this council meant to be established if there's only 5 million allocated? The concern was around the forecasted cost and the 24 posts, which appears to be exorbitant, and the need for more information as to how did they come to this determination. And there was a clear disjuncture between the intent of the Act versus how the department was interpreting the Act and then deciding what sort of resources was required to give effect and ensure the operations of the council. Around the Secretariat, the concern was that the existing staff within the Secretariat would become redundant once the council was established, that you'd lose institutional and historical memory when you appoint new staff. Moving then to program 3 around monitoring and employment equity. Members spoke at length about the Employment Equity Act and what's the role of the department in looking at how far the country's come in attaining these goals. And the concern was particularly around the poor progress around the 2% target. With gender responsive budgeting, members linked your understanding and observations from your meeting with National Treasury, saying National Treasury says it's not working, it's not effective, and then asking the department when that framework would be reviewed. Program 4, overall, the concern was 19 targets, 15 million. Too many targets, too little money, too little people, and that was unrealistic. Reiterated again the concern around that 2% budget allocation for the rights of persons with disabilities was just too minuscule. Moving on to program 5, where the department had a mechanism to monitor the budget of over 1 billion allocated to the NYDA, whether there was any value for money analysis done in terms of what was allocated to the NYDA, consequence management, if senior management and the leadership of the NYDA did not implement or attain targets. And again, that the NYDA alone cannot address the unemployment country in the crisis in the country, and therefore asked what the department would recommend in terms of interdepartmental collaboration to address the crisis. As we move over to the NYDA, a similar format, looking at general matters and then program specific. The reports were welcomed. There was reference to within the stat plan, they're now talking to that age cohort to 0 to 14 and the impact that cohort would have on youth 15 to 34, but they don't unpack that. And the committee is asking for more details. For the rural outreach, it was to strengthen partnerships with existing departments like that of rural development and land reform. And again, practical examples coming from constituency where members indicated that on the ground, the NYDAs may have made contact, but the follow-up was poor and didn't really make a difference to the youth in those relevant constituencies. So the concern was it can't just be once-off events, there has to be continuity and ensure that an impact is made. For office accommodation and the vehicles, based on the oversight visit, again, questioning the accessibility of the offices and how accessible these are to rural youth, the mobile trucks and vehicles, where they were stationed, how many they were, and whether even with these mobile trucks and vehicles, if rural youth actually had access to them. With collaboration, the committee just inquired about the nature of the collaboration between the various government departments and entities. Specific board-related matters, the committee noted that both in the strat plan and the APP, there was no specific target related to the work of the board or monitoring and evaluating their performance. And that was noted as an area that needed to be looked at. Whether there was money allocated for the induction of new members, overall the concern around the delay of the appointment of the new board, and then the concerns about the utterances by the minister at a previous engagement and the impact that that may have had. With respect to the interim chairperson, again, the question was about occupying dual roles and what the implications of that was. And that even though a response was provided, the committee was still not a response, and that matter needed to be looked at in more detail. For persons with disabilities, The committee emphasized working collaboratively with other stakeholders, and noted the work done by NYDA and PCTA in the Northern Cape in providing entrepreneurship support, and that there was a commitment needed from the NYDA on the targets related to persons with disabilities. In terms of access to digital resources, noted the concerns relating to access, but also acknowledged the work that the NYDA has done in that regard. For Program 1, again, the issue of visibility, what the NYDA was doing to increase that. For donor funding, the committee noted there was a decrease in donor funding, and even though the NYDA ensured the committee that they're able to break even, it does not have a significant, and that it doesn't have a significant impact on the NYDA's performance, and that they were confident that this would be improved in terms of accessing more donor funding in the quarters to follow. For HR, for NYDA, again, 119 vacancies, but only 5 currently in the process of being filled. And again, of those 119, which were priority areas, for the CEO appointment, yes, the new CEO was welcomed, but members asked for the criteria for the appointment for that position. Program 2, the targets lack specificity. Again, it's just that a breakdown in terms of province, gender, and disability. For Program 3, the rural strategy was welcomed, but it was still unclear about how that would be actually implemented. Moving on to the Commission for Gender Equality, same format, looking at general and then program-specific matters. Both the strat plan and the APP was welcome, but the overall concern with the strat plan was that quality, that the expectation was this is a national document, it's supposed to be of a high standard, but it appeared that it lacked some serious editing. Overall, the targets were not smart. It lacked the specific details about how they would implement it, who they would engage with, how many would they reach, where would this be conducted. And some examples have been cited. The concern also under general, it is unclear how the CGE will monitor and evaluate long-term impacts of its activities and initiatives in undertaking for the financial year ahead and the rest of the 5 years. So overall, the committee consistently reiterated at this moment in time, based on what was tabled, the stat plan and APP, the committee cannot see how they're determining impact in terms of workshops, awareness raising, education programs, legal clinics, submissions, and research. And then lastly, under general, yes, the committee welcomed the focus on women and girls, but reiterated this is a commission for gender equality, so it should be more comprehensive and also focus on men, boys, issues of positive masculinity, as well as LGBTQIA plus persons. In terms of budget and resources, we acknowledge the funding constraints, but as with the department, given the limited funding, questioning then, should they be doing so many things? Maybe there should be a review of the number of targets and activities, but more so, there appears to be disjuncture or contradictions in the APP and stat plan. On the one end, the forward, both documents were signed off by senior management and the assurance they were able to fulfill and achieve the targets. But at the same time, within the documents, they also reiterate because of the limited funds, they may not be able to give effect to their mandate. So there's definitely a contradiction in relation to that. With respect to the budget allocation between the head office and the provincial offices, again, the members are saying programs are implemented at a provincial level, but the majority of the funding is at head office, and that was a concern, and an explanation was required. And overall, questioned how the CGE will ensure service delivery if additional funding is not secured, and then just generally, how the CGE ensures cost effectiveness of its operations. Another matter under the budget was that 3.9 million and the other. The CFO actually didn't respond to that question in the meeting on yesterday. And that's particularly important because without knowing what that 3 million rand is, how would the committee assess per quarter to determine whether they would be over or underspending, and also on what that would be spent? For this unfunded business model, again, there was the concern about that 70 million rand required on an annual basis to fund the business model. More information was required. The reference was made to a funding strategy to source additional donor funds. More information that was acknowledged, but more information was also sought. In terms of the legal standing, the committee was assured in the case in oversight the matter was dealt with. However, the two documents, Strat Plan and APP, indicate the CG is not part of the Act, and that impacts on the standing as a legal entity. And related to that, the CEO went on to explain the use of lawyers who offer pro bono services, and in other instances where they do pay attorneys for specific work on behalf of the CGE. But in that respect, the concern was, please provide us with more information in that regard so that the committee can understand, based on the budget, what's been allocated for outsourcing those services. Rural impact, the concern again, lack of awareness and visibility, and that there needs to be a rural strategy to show how they're going to increase on their reach. For commissioners, the important role of commissioners and what they play for the CGE was highlighted and reference made to the Commissioner's Handbook, particularly around the reporting. Chairperson highlighted in the BRR 2024, the request was that they submit quarterly reports. That wasn't forthcoming. Overall, there wasn't a plan for the committee to understand how and where and through what commissioners would contribute to the targets, both outlined in the Strat Plan and APP. The issue of that policy that governs relations between CGE and the administration was also not apparent. Whether the committee was assured that all commissioners were workshopped on the handbook. And then around the public engagement, the concern was based on the handbook. It's very clear who's responsible for media engagement. And if the commissioners are the face of the CGE, how is it that a legal advisor from the chairperson's office did an interview around ENCA? Around the enforcement of recommendations, again, not over-reliance on the outcome of the Constitutional Court judgment, but notwithstanding that, what's their plan? How do they intend looking at enforcement of the recommendations in terms of collaboration? Committee wanting to know, is the CGE sticking to its mandate and not taking on matters that is outside of its purview? In the case of the teenage pregnancy, how they're working with basic education to be clear about the role of basic education vis-a-vis the CGE. Similarly, in terms of this example cited around the Public Service Commission. For monitoring and evaluation, again, the committee questioned how they're going to be monitoring and evaluating all the key priority policy documents, national and international, and goals that pertain to gender equality, the impact of their communication, whether they were monitoring gender responsive budgeting. For risk mitigation, they've acknowledged that the CGE does have strategies in place, but the details in that regard were lacking and more information was required. For the matters for GBV, there is an overall lack of focus that's not apparent when it comes to both the Strat Plan and APP for GBV and the CGE. So yes, they do individual activities, but there's no clear strategy to say, well, for GBV 25, 26, and for the next 5 years, this is what we intend doing. The concern again around that target around not monitoring courts, police stations, and TCCs were raised. Land reform, Again, the issue here was that there was an acknowledgement that the discrimination of unmarried women and women without children in terms of communal land ownership that was raised by the CGE is important. But what was the response subsequent to that after the CGE raised the matter? Case management, the committee unpacked the issue of that 900 cases and again just asked for more details around that, because at the end it would appear that 8 a month is too low. But more than that, if there was a shift from individual to systemic, what that implied. Moving on to recommendations. Again, these are subdivided between Department, NYDA and CGE. For the bills, to submit a clear time frame for the completion of bills. For the department to stick to its mandate. For more details around consultants, when, how they'll be used and the cost implications. Request for the business case to be submitted. For interventions, really for the department to reconsider all those interventions across the 5 years, but also within the financial year 25-26. So as opposed to doing all of the interventions, maybe they should just do one. So for example, in program 2, they would focus on the green economy, sanitary dignity program and 2 other areas, but 1 a quarter. So as opposed to having 1 a quarter, look at only 1 focus area and do that throughout the year and ensure that you, when it comes to the green economy as an example, that all the women in relation to that particular matter is engaged with every quarter, and that you can evaluate by the end of the year what kind of difference you're making, as opposed to having once-off events. For sanitary dignity, that it needed to be reviewed, and that there needs to be an indication in the 25-26 how they're going to do that, and request more documentation and information. For the council, for them to submit a copy of the proposal that was sent to Treasury to fund the council and include a detailed justification for the proposed structure of that 24-member secretariat, given that the intention of the Regional Act was to be a coordinating body. For M&E, a breakdown of all those departments and municipalities they're going to monitor in terms of the gender-responsive planning and budgeting, evaluating, auditing frameworks, the National Strategic Plan and the prevention strategy, as well as the Sanitary Dignity Program. For gender-responsive budgeting, the policy must be reviewed in consultation with Treasury, submit as well as the templates used, and there has to be a clear advocacy and awareness strategy. International travel, we're asking for a report of travel that has happened to date, and then and 2 is for 25-26, also details in that regard in terms of purpose, visits and size, and that as they plan for the next financial year, maybe it's to give the committee an idea of these are the non-negotiable events that the minister and the deputy minister has to travel to. Hypothetically, they're 4 in the year. So over and above that, there will be 10 additional invites, and how they begin to decide of those 10, what they would take on. And that would definitely look at bringing down some of their costs. For program 4, it's for them to reduce the number of targets from 19 to less. They must come back to the committee and say what would they reprioritize. For October, MTBPS, request for additional funding and motivate why. For learners with disabilities, given that the committee has undertaken that oversight to KZN, and that there is reference in the APP that they have done some work, but it needs to be stronger. There needs to be a greater focus in this area and an indication as to how the department will address that matter. For program 5, submit a detailed report, detailed information on rural and peri-urban youth that directly benefited from the NYDA grants and internships, and that this amended APP, in other words, a relook of the targets to be submitted and presented to the committee by 22 July. That would be our last meeting. For the NYDA, the request for that evaluation that was done by the external service provider on the board, there must be a specific target that looks at accountability of the board, office and accommodation, asking for a report of all the district offices, satellite and mobile offices, as well as the deployment of these offices or digital hubs to remote areas with entrepreneurship training, funding, information and skills development. For the vehicles, again, the number of vehicles, what they cost, are they all the NYDAs, or are they vehicles used from government, for a report in that regard. For the CEO, it's the criteria for the appointment. For the vacancies, what the priority vacancies are and the progress around filling those, as well as timeframes. For the rural strategy, to submit the strategy plus a clear plan of how they're going to implement it. This disclosure of interest, that report to be submitted for both Mpumalanga and KZN, progress reports following up the outreach done in the Kanaland and the Lekwa local municipality, reports on disaggregated data on beneficiaries, ensuring that the collaboration is fostered with municipalities and departments, collaboration with the disability sector in terms of DPOs, and then in terms of this dual position occupied by the chairperson, to further look at what the implications are. For the CGE, that the APP be amended and the target need to be smart. All the documents must be edited. APPs in future should be outcomes-based. In preparation for that workshop, that the relevant document in terms of the business model, funding strategy, commissioners' reports, response from National Treasury be sent prior to the workshop. Again, a detailed plan of the intended contribution of each commissioner to the stat plan and APP, quarterly reports from the commissioners, an update on that policy that governs relations between commissioners and staff, a proposed plan of what this 36 regional offices would entail as per province, together with the costing and forecasting. So it's not, we're asking for, don't just tell us where those offices will be based, but what the cost implication is for each. Again, to review the accessibility of the current offices, provide feedback at the next quarter report for the 3.9 million, to explain what that means, and then also why the CFO did not respond and explain to the committee. A report on the vacancies, ensure compliance of recommendations, and a plan in the event with respect to the Concord outcome. A quarterly update on the legal standing matters, and then for these pro bono legal practitioners, as well as other legal practitioners, a report in terms of women, youth, persons with disabilities, what the cost, what those legal practitioners are covering and for how long. A report on the outcome of the audit action plan, the effectiveness of the CGE programs and a plan of how they will do that, to expand on its rural reach, that they need a strategy, a report on the backlog of cases, and as I conclude, a report on the implementation of recommendations on the report of teenage pregnancy. In other words, they've done the research, what's the progress, and what was the outcome of the responses, both by DBE as well as the Portfolio Committee of Education. And then include a target specifically focused on monitoring hotspot police stations and related courts and TCCs. And then for Treasury is to recommend that Treasury adequately funds the department and the CGE in order to give effect to its mandate. And in conclusion, the committee welcomes the report and will continue to conduct astute oversight. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Ms. Abrams. Did we give an explanation as to why some of the recommendations were in yellow?
Yes, Chair. So the report I submitted last night, as I indicated by 7, had all the recommendations. This morning I received additional recommendations and observations, and those were the ones I put in yellow so members could see what the difference was between last night's report and this morning. So that's the only, just to highlight what the additions were.
Okay, perfect. Now is the opportunity for you, honorable members, to tell me whether you are happy with the report, or whether you want some additions made or some edits made, or whether you want to delete or add. So I'll see if there are any hands at this stage. I don't see any hands. So I take it that honorable members are all happy with our budget report. I see the hand of the Honorable Kanile.
Greetings, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I actually wanted to indicate that I'm happy with the report. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Kanile. Will you then move formally for the adoption of the budget vote report?
Absolutely, Chair. I move for the adoption of the report.
Thank you very much. Can I ask for a seconder? Can I take a hand to second the adoption?
Sorry, Chair, just a quick one. I do second.
Mhm.
I just felt in that part of us writing to the president, I think the speaker, I think if I heard you correctly last week, you said we're either going to write to the speaker or we've written to the speaker, and I didn't see it in our observations there. So maybe
Okay.
with those additions, I'm happy.
Okay, we will add that. Yes, we did write to the speaker. And in fact, I did get an email back today as well. And there is definitely pressure being put on the presidency to finalize this matter. So it is in progress. I see the hand of the Honorable Mkhunu. Honorable Mkhunu. Okay. We will make that addition. So then, Honorable Lonzi, do you second with that addition?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lonzi. Colleagues, that then brings us to the end of this process. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all honorable members for your hard work throughout May, and for those who will be participating in the budget vote debates tomorrow. I do see that MKP reserves their right not to support. Let me just turn off my video because my connection is not stable. I see that there's a note from MKP that they reserve their right not to support our report, and that is noted and it will be minuted. As I said, good luck to all honorable members who will be participating in the debate tomorrow. I hope that will make meaningful impacts or inputs in terms of how we would like to see our department moving forward. Honorable members, on the group, I have shared with you the invitation that you've received to join the minister. Yes.
Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted you to note in bold letters that beside the MKP, all of us were accepting the budget, the statement.
The
Okay.
report. Hey, you see now, you're distorting us. So
Or accepting the report, Chair. Nobody's if it's accepted by Honorable Lonzi, we're fine. All of us were fine.
Oh, you make me laugh, colleagues. That's fine. We are all fine and we are all happy. That's fine. Colleagues, you've received the invitation to join the minister tomorrow. She has sent an invitation for you to join her at a media briefing, which starts at 1 o'clock. And then she's also invited you to join her at the pre-budget event, which starts at 1:30. But I've put all the information on the group. I would like to then, on behalf of all honorable members, thank our support team for the hard work that they've put into supporting us throughout May and June. Thank you, Ms. Abrams. Thank you, Ms. Matthews, Ms. Levendal, Ms. Silly, and Mr. Dumuzweni. We really do appreciate your support. Honourable members, I have indicated to you before that next week on the 8th and the 15th, budget votes start at 10 o'clock, so we will not meet. Our last meeting for this term will be an in-person meeting on the 22nd of July, when we will also be getting legal feedback, hopefully with regards to our proposal for a committee bill as it pertains to the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. So thank you again, honourable colleagues, for joining this special meeting, and I wish all of you well. And yes, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Long live the chair.
Oh, long live my mother.
Long live
Long
the
live the
honorable my
chair!
son. Long live
Long
my
live
son,
Honorable Lonzi! Long live! Long live
Thank-
Kopeti! Long live!
The chair, long live, Wigan. Long live to yourself, call me.
Oh, today you are nice to me. The last two meetings, you were not so nice, but it's fine. I will get you.
Ah,
I'm waiting for
chair.
you, Chair. I'm
Why
waiting
do you
for
think
you,
I'm not
Chair.
nice to you?
Hey, you break my heart. You know, you break my heart, but it's fine. I'll come and get you tomorrow. Don't worry.
Ngantoni, ngantoni, ndenzentoni.
Bye, colleagues.
Bye, bye, chair. Long live the chair.
Bye-bye, colleagues. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.